Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the perfect, shimmering surface of a Hollywood romance? You know, the kind splashed across every magazine cover, the envy of millions. In the Golden Age, that surface was everything. It was the brand, the product, the fantasy. But behind the velvet curtains and the studio gates, a different story often played out. A story of secrets of survival and of arrangements made in the shadows. We're talking about Lavender Marriages, unions of convenience meticulously crafted to shield the public from a truth they just weren't ready to see, that their favorite leading man might love another man, or their beloved starlet, another woman. The studio system was a dream factory, but it was also a machine with very specific rules. Morality clauses and contracts were ironclad, and any hint of deviancy could mean the end of a career. The pressure was immense, a gilded cage where personal happiness was sacrificed for public adoration. To be a star, you had to fit the mold of the all-American ideal. A loving spouse, a happy home, it was all part of the performance. And for gay and lesbian actors, this performance extended far beyond the soundstage and into their most intimate relationships, forcing them into marriages that were little more than elaborate, heartbreaking illusions. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on three of the most talked-about arrangements in Hollywood history: Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates, Cary Grant and Randolph Scott and his first marriage, Rudolph Valentino and Jean Acker, passionate, perplexing, ultimately doomed. These are the stories of what it cost to be a star when who you loved was a liability. In the landscape of 1950s Hollywood, no star burned brighter than Rock Hudson. He was the perfect man, sculpted by the gods of celluloid. Tall, dark, impossibly handsome, with a voice that could melt butter and a smile that promised forever. He was the embodiment of post-war American masculinity, the guy every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to be with. Universal Pictures had invested millions in crafting this image, and it was paying off spectacularly. He was box office gold, a living, breathing fantasy. But behind the scenes, a different reality was unfolding, one that threatened to shatter the entire illusion. Whispers had been circulating for years among the Hollywood elite. Insiders knew that Rock's real life didn't match his on-screen persona. His agent, the formidable and Machiavellian Henry Wilson, was a master of spinning narratives, and more importantly, burying secrets. Wilson had built his career on creating male idols, and he knew that the public's adoration was contingent on a very specific, very straight image. The threat became terrifyingly real when Confidential magazine, a notorious scandal sheet that trafficked in outing Hollywood's darkest secrets, threatened to publish an exposé on Hudson's homosexuality. The story would have been a career killer, an atomic bomb dropped on Universal's biggest asset. The panic in the studio corridors must have been palpable. He needed a smokescreen, a deflection so brilliant and so public that it would render the rumors unbelievable. The solution was as old as Hollywood itself: a marriage. Wilson brokered a deal. In exchange for Confidential squashing the story on Hudson, he offered them dirt on two of his other, less valuable clients. With the immediate fire put out, he moved to the next phase of his plan: finding Rock a wife. The bride-to-be was Phyllis Gates, Wilson's own secretary. She was pretty, unassuming, and most importantly, she was part of the system. The courtship was a whirlwind, a masterclass in public relations. It was manufactured for the cameras, every date a photo opportunity, every glance carefully choreographed. They were photographed at premieres, cozying up in restaurants, looking every bit the smitten couple. The press ate it up, presenting it as the fairy tale romance of the year. In November 1955, Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates were married in a small, quiet ceremony. The machine had won. The scandal was averted, and Rock's image as the ideal leading man was secure, now complete with a lovely wife on his arm. The public breathed a collective sigh of relief. Their hero was safe. The fantasy could continue, but for the two people at the center of this arrangement, the performance was just beginning, and the set was now their own home. What did Phyllis know? That question has been debated for decades. In her later memoir, she claimed she was a naive victim, deeply in love, and completely unaware of her husband's true nature, or the arrangement she had been pushed into. She portrayed herself as the wronged woman, heartbroken when the truth of her sham marriage finally came to light. But others paint a different picture. Hollywood insiders have long suggested that Gates was far from naive. As Henry Wilson's secretary, she would have been privy to the inner workings of his operation. Could she really have been completely in the dark about the man she was marrying? Or was she a willing participant, perhaps hoping she could change him, or maybe just content to play a role in exchange for the security and glamour that came with being Mrs. Rock Hudson. The marriage itself was, by all accounts, a strained and unhappy affair. Hudson was increasingly absent, throwing himself into his work, or finding excuses to be away from home. The public image of domestic bliss was a stark contrast to the lonely, quiet reality inside their house. Just 3 years after the fairy tale wedding, the marriage was over. Phyllis Gates filed for divorce in 1958, citing mental cruelty. Rock Hudson's career miraculously continued to soar. The marriage had served its purpose. It had provided him with a crucial shield during a vulnerable period, solidifying his image and allowing him to become an even bigger star throughout the 60s. Before Rock Hudson, there was Cary Grant. If Hudson was the boy next door, Grant was the epitome of worldly sophistication. He was impossibly charming. He was debonair, with an accent that was neither British nor American but uniquely his own. He was the man every woman dreamed of being swept off her feet by, and the man every man wished he could be. His on-screen persona was one of effortless grace and witty confidence, a perfect romantic lead. But Cary Grant was a carefully constructed character, an invention of a man named Archibald Leach. And Archie Leach's life was far more complex and shadowed than Cary Grant's ever appeared. From the very beginning of his career, whispers and rumors followed him. These weren't the loud, scandalous accusations that Confidential magazine would later hurl, but a persistent, quiet murmur among those in the know. The talk centered on his intense, and to many, unusually close relationships with other men. The most significant of these relationships was with fellow actor Randolph Scott. For over a decade, Grant and Scott lived together, on and off, in a beach house they playfully dubbed Bachelor Hall. The official story was that they were just two frugal bachelors splitting the rent. But photographs from the era tell a different story. They show a domestic intimacy, a level of comfort and closeness that went far beyond a typical roommate situation. They looked like a couple. These images, of them lounging by the pool, working out, sharing meals, were published in fan magazines at the time. In the 1930s, the concept of two male stars living together didn't raise the same red flags it would just a few years later. It was seen as quirky, perhaps, but not necessarily scandalous. The public, not yet trained to look for an alternative narrative, mostly took it at face value. The studios, however, were growing nervous. As Grant's star ascended, the pressure to conform to a more traditional image mounted. The studio, Paramount, knew that their leading man's unconventional living situation could become a liability. A star of his magnitude needed to be seen as romantically available to women, not living in domestic bliss with another man. The whispers were getting louder, and just like with Rock Hudson years later, a solution was needed. A wife would quiet the talk. Enter Virginia Cherrill. She was a beautiful actress, known for her role as the blind flower girl in Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece, City Lights. Their courtship was a whirlwind affair, heavily publicized and pushed by the studio. It had all the hallmarks of a classic Hollywood romance, designed for maximum public consumption. In 1934, Cary Grant and Virginia Cherrill married in London. The press celebrated the union of two of cinema's brightest stars, but the marriage was a disaster from the start. The union lasted a mere 13 months. The divorce was messy and public, with Cherrill accusing Grant of cruelty. After the divorce, what did Grant do? He moved right back in with Randolph Scott. Bachelor Hall was open for business once again. This fact, more than any other, fuels the enduring belief that his marriage to Cherrill was a classic Lavender arrangement. Before Cary Grant was the sophisticate and Rock Hudson the all-American hunk, there was Rudolph Valentino. He was something else entirely. He was exotic, passionate, dangerous, the Latin lover. In the roaring 20s, at the height of the silent film era, Valentino was arguably the biggest star in the world. He created a new kind of male sexuality on screen, one that was sensual, androgynous, and drove female audiences into a frenzy. But this new brand of masculinity was also deeply threatening to many American men. He was labeled a pink powder puff, a derogatory term used in a scathing Chicago Tribune editorial. The pressure to project a heterosexual image was enormous. It's within this context of intense public scrutiny that we must view his first and most bizarre marriage. In 1919, before he hit superstardom, Valentino met Jean Acker. She was part of the Sewing Circle, a coded term for a group of powerful lesbians and bisexual women which included the formidable star Alla Nazimova. Acker was known to be in a relationship with Grace Darmond. After a whirlwind courtship of only a few weeks, Valentino and Acker impulsively decided to get married. The wedding night, however, became the stuff of Hollywood legend. According to Valentino, when he went to their hotel room, he found the door locked. Acker reportedly yelled from inside, "I've made a mistake, you can't come in." He was left standing in the hallway, humiliated. The marriage was never consummated. They separated almost immediately, though the divorce proceedings dragged on for years. Why did they get married in the first place? The story fits the Lavender Marriage narrative almost perfectly. It's widely believed that Acker was pressured into the marriage by her own mentors, perhaps as a way to provide her with a cover and quell any rumors about her own sexuality. For Valentino, the benefits were also clear. Marrying a beautiful actress, even if the marriage was a sham, helped to bolster his masculine credentials. It was a public declaration of his heterosexuality at a time when it was being actively questioned. The marriage to Jean Acker in particular stands as a potential early prototype of the Lavender Marriage. It was a brief, explosive, and deeply sad affair that locked them both in a public performance they couldn't sustain even for a single night. The stories of Rock Hudson, Cary Grant, Rudolph Valentino are more than just celebrity gossip. They are searing indictments of a system that demanded perfection at an impossible price. The Golden Age studio system was a kingdom built on fantasy, with a rigid moral code. These Lavender Marriages were a direct consequence of that pressure, a survival tactic for artists whose talent was valuable but whose truth was a liability. The studio was both protector and jailer, offering fame and fortune while demanding the sacrifice of personal identity. These arrangements were the ultimate performance, a role they had to play long after the director yelled "cut." As we look back at these hidden histories, it's impossible not to reflect on the progress we've made. Today, actors can come out and not only keep their careers, but see them flourish. LGBTQ+ stories are being told with authenticity and celebrated at the highest levels. The idea of a studio forcing its biggest star into a sham marriage feels like a relic. We've come so far. Honor the painful sacrifices of those who couldn't live openly, sacrifices that paved the way for today's freedoms. The gilded cage has, for many, been broken open, but the story is never truly over. What do you think? Are there other famous Lavender Marriages from the Golden Age that we didn't cover? Do you see echoes of these pressures in the entertainment industry today? The conversation about authenticity, image, and the price of fame is as relevant as ever. Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's continue to pull back the curtain and ensure these hidden histories are never forgotten. Thank you for watching.